Great, so we are going through chapters 14 and 15 of Joshua. Can't promise it's going to be perfect because I had less time than usual because I was so crazy busy, but that's okay, we're just going to keep going. And then I'm debating, I might cancel until the new year, just because I know that obviously Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve we're not going to, but I think I might need that extra week because I'm going to be home with the kids, so a lot. So let's just do that then, if that's okay. What I'd like to do for reading, because I'm not going to make you all read all those names. You're welcome. Yes.
No.
We are going to do all of chapter 14, which is only 15 verses, so that's not hardly anything, and there's not a lot of crazy names in it. But then in chapter 15, I just have a select few, verses 13 to 19, and then verse 63. So that should be easy enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's just go ahead and everybody do one verse, and I'll read the last 3 or whatever it is.
Starting with where?
In chapter 14, verse 1, we're just going to all go around and read one verse.
Okay.
You want to
This
start us
way?
off?
Sure.
Go for it.
Now these are the territories which the sons of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest, and Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the households of the tribes of the sons of Israel apportioned to them for an inheritance.
These 9.5 tribes received their grants of land by means of sacred lots in accordance with the Lord's command through Moses.
Moses had granted the 2.5 tribes their inheritance east of the Jordan, but had not granted the Levites an inheritance among the rest.
For the sons of Joseph had become 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. The Levites received no share of the land, but only towns to live in, with pasture land for their flocks and herds.
So the Israelites divided the land, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Now the people of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, "You know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh Barnea, about you and me."
I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land, and I brought him back a report according to my convictions.
Nevertheless, my brethren that went up with me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly followed Jehovah my God.
So Moses swore on that day, saying, "Surely the land on which your foot has trodden will be an inheritance to you and to your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God fully."
And now behold, the Lord has kept me alive, just as he said, these 45 years since the time that the Lord spoke this word to Moses, while Israel walked in the wilderness. And now behold, I am this day 85 years old.
I am as strong now as I was when Moses sent me on that journey, and I can still travel and fight as well as I could then.
Now then, give me this hill country about which the Lord spoke on that day. For you heard on that day that Anakim were there with great fortified cities. Perhaps the Lord will be with me, and I will drive them out as the Lord has spoken. So Joshua blessed him and gave Hebron to Caleb the son of Jephunneh for an inheritance. Therefore Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite until this day, because he followed the Lord God of Israel fully. Now the name of Hebron was formerly Kiriath Arba, for Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim. Then the land had rest from war. All right, and then chapter 15, verses 13 to 19. I'll just read it. Now he gave to Caleb the son of Jephunneh a portion among the sons of Judah according to the command of the Lord to Joshua, namely Kiriath Arba, Arba being the father of Anak, that is Hebron. Caleb drove out from there the 3 sons of Anak, Sheshai, and Ahiman, and Talmai, the children of Anak. Then he went up from there against the inhabitants of Debir. Now the name of Debir formerly was Kiriath Sepher. And Caleb said, the one who attacks Kiriath Sepher and captures it, I will give Achsah, my daughter, as a wife. Othniel, the son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, captured it, so he gave him Achsah, his daughter, as a wife. It came about that when she came to him, she persuaded him to ask her father for a field. So she alighted from the donkey, and Caleb said to her, what do you want? Then she said, give me a blessing, since you have given me the land of the Negev, give me also springs of water. So he gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. And then in verse 63, after all these cities are named, now as for the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the sons of Judah could not drive them out. So the Jebusites live with the sons of Judah at Jerusalem until this day. All right, so there's our reading. I did not create a rough outline. I figured we could kind of try to piece that together ourselves. What do we see? Some things that happened in chapter 14.
Joshua was fulfilling the promises that Moses had made to the people from way back.
Yep. What kind of promises?
Well, for their land, the inheritance.
Yes, exactly.
The Levites, of course, don't get an inheritance because God is their inheritance.
Yep, that's right. But it's repeated quite often, and I think it's for that reminder, you know. Yep. What else happened in chapter 14?
The Levites didn't receive any land.
Yep. So they are the
Towns.
just the towns and place for their animals. Yep.
The land had rest for more.
Mhm. What did Caleb have to do in this chapter?
Remind of the promise that Moses made him of getting his own, like, allotment and
Right.
inheritance.
Right. Yep. That goes right along with what Marilee said about fulfilling promises made. That includes a specific promise to Caleb. And so then what did Joshua say to Caleb after that request?
Well, it says he blessed him.
Blessed him, and he gave him Hebron. Yep. And then in chapter 15, a lot of record in this chapter about the territory, different cities that are within the territory, where the borders are, exactly. It's basically a legal land statement document is kind of what this is. It's drawing it up for us. And then in the middle of it, though, in those chapters that I read, what do we see happen with Caleb again?
He gives his daughter to somebody
Mm-hmm.
that conquered, but I don't know what the significance of that conquering was.
Okay, we can look into that. I'll write that down as a.
I'm also curious why she felt like she wanted to ask for a blessing or like more of like some land or something.
Sure. Okay, so what was your question, Marilee?
What's the significance?
What was the significance of that town that he wanted conquered
Okay.
in order to give his daughter?
And then, what did you say, Molly?
Why did his daughter like ask for a blessing or something?
And what did she wanna do with the water?
Mm-hmm. She's married now, like, why, yeah.
She got the land, but
Yeah.
then
Must
she,
need the water for the land.
Yeah.
When you control water, they say you control a lot
That's
more
true.
than just your.
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
She might be a businesswoman.
If she's
mean,
anything like her father,
right.
she's got a good head on her shoulders, you know. Caleb was very wise and in a lot of what he did, and we see that even just in the few things that we see about his life. So if she's anything like him, then she's not just asking because she's greedy, she's got a reason for it. I think you're right on that. Any other thoughts or questions about these two chapters before we get going?
Why couldn't they, mine says dislodge the Jebusites.
Mm-hmm. Why
Yeah.
couldn't they?
Right.
It's a very good question.
That's gonna cause trouble later.
And they just lived among them, that's what mine says, I think.
Could not drive them out, mine says.
And who were the Jebusites descendants of?
I don't know who they're descendants of, but they're the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So they're just the Canaanite people that inhabit the city of Jerusalem. Somewhere, hold on. There we go. Right there. Which, I think this is really interesting, and I didn't realize this until I was reading the commentary. Jerusalem, look at that. It is perfectly on the border of Judah's territory, Benjamin's territory. It's hard to see, but the color pink and the color yellow, the line is literally right here where Jerusalem lies. And so one of the commentaries said that for a while it just kind of like was wishy-washy on who got it, who handled that town. You know, like within Caleb's time, we have in Judah, but then I think in future years, I think that the land territories got a little bit, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how that worked, because then the commentary said that sometimes Benjamin handled it, sometimes Judah handled it. But Benjamin was also known to be a very, how do I put this? They were very fierce and ruthless as a tribe. So it doesn't surprise me that maybe they kind of tried to have a little bit of a power struggle with Judah for a hold on that city. No. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, sounds good. Let's see. Oh yeah, I was gonna look at the map. So I struggled with the map a little bit. I struggled a little bit with it. But between these two maps, I should be able to show you at least some things. So here's, right here, we've got, this is the desert. This is their route out of Egypt, Mount Sinai, wandering, and then up, and then this is where they crossed and then took Jericho. So we can see that. This is the lower portion of Judah's territory. Remember, Judah has that weird thing where it's like Simeon's right in the middle of it. So this map has the lower portion of it. This map has the upper portion of it. So I'm using both of them to kind of piece it together. But here's Hebron, right here, and here's Jerusalem or Jebusites. And let's see, this one here shows some of the other towns that we're dealing with. Okay. Here's Kiryat Sefer right here, which I think is interesting because it shows it in Simeon's land territory. So I'm not exactly sure about that. But then here's Debir and Hebron right here, the Anakim. So yeah, that's kind of the area that we're looking at, I think.
Which is what Caleb was given, right?
Yeah, so he was given this area here with Hebron,
Is Caleb from the tribe of Judah?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Adullam, I think, is in there somewhere. So, as far as I can tell, his area is over here. But I don't know exactly how far his area goes to. So here's one of the questions that I had as far as the map, and I don't have an answer for it. Remember, it talks about how he wants somebody to take the town of Kiriath Sefer, right? And Kiriath Sefer is, that's the former name of what's now called Debir. Debir is right here. Kiriath Sefer is here. So I'm not sure if those are two different towns or what. The other thing is Debir is a town that's listed as one that's been conquered by Joshua in like chapter 10 maybe. So here's what I don't know is if it's a different Debir than what we're talking about in this chapter, or if it's the same Debir but Joshua only took out the king but didn't actually drive out the inhabitants yet. So it's only a temporary hold on this, a temporary conquering of this town. And now Caleb is going one step farther and saying, we need to drive out the inhabitants and then possess it. So those are some of the thoughts that I have. I don't have a full scale answer for you on it, but.
The two towns are a ways apart,
Yes,
So it's hard
and in
to-
different territories.
so it doesn't make sense that it sounds like one place in this verse, right?
It does sound like that, yes, because it says
Well, yeah.
that Kiriath Sefer is formerly, or Debir is formerly Kiriath Sefer, in verse 15 of chapter 15.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So I don't think that it's two different places. But on this map, I don't know exactly. I want to say it's probably the one that's closest to Hebron, which is, Caleb's territory. We know that for sure. So it would be the closest within his range of his own territory.
Because it doesn't make sense that he would go into Simeon's territory.
Right, exactly. So,
Mine says in chapter 10 that they took the city, its king, and its villages, everyone in it, they totally destroyed. They left no
Of Debir.
survivors. Yes.
okay. So maybe it is a different Debir than what we're looking at here? I don't know. That language is really, really hard to interpret because the utterly destroyed language, it could mean all the inhabitants, it could mean the whole army, it could mean everyone who resisted, it could mean a whole lot of things. Because, we see that time and time again of where it would say, they completely, utterly destroyed them. And then later you see the people show up later in Israel's history and you're like, hold up, I thought they were utterly destroyed. Well, that's just a way of speaking. We do the same thing with sports. We totally destroyed the competition. You didn't actually, you just defeated them in that one game or whatever it is. So it's a hard language to interpret completely, which makes it hard later on. And then they rename things and doesn't make it easy on us. But we do have an idea of what we're looking at here. So, okay, so that's all I've got for the map. Any other questions on the map? Hopefully ones I can answer.
They talked about cities and like 9 cities and their villages. I think I saw, cities, towns, and villages. Are they like suburbs?
That's a good question. I'm guessing it's just a village, what you would consider a village, a grouping of people who are living together. I don't know if they are, if it goes so far as like they have their own king or they, something like that. I kind of doubt that. But I want to say it's just.
Almost all of them say like Ekron with its towns and its villages.
So just outliers
And
and within the same
All of them
area.
are saying that.
Yeah, yeah, so, yeah, maybe something along the lines of suburbs like we kind of look at today. Could be, it's hard to tell because, I mean, their landscape is a lot different than our landscape, you know? They're not, zoned and rebuilt, you know? So, but I would say that from what it sounds like is anybody within that, the towns, the villages, they are all, linked to, people-wise,
Okay.
to that, is my guess.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Any translation changes that you guys noticed when we were reading?
I think Rochelle, yours in verse 12, at the end, I think yours said perhaps, may the Lord be with me when Caleb was speaking.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting. Mine says it may be. So I was like, I feel like that's,
And that was in 14.
sorry, yeah, 14:12.
Perhaps the Lord will be with me, yes.
I just thought that was, it's a little more stronger, like, maybe God will be with me.
Right.
And mine is like, it may be
Ah,
that the
okay.
Lord will be with me.
Yes,
So,
yes.
that caught
Yeah.
my attention.
I think that is, well, but I think it's also appropriate language from Caleb. He's not Joshua.
Right.
He doesn't
Right.
receive the word of God. So, and he's not the priest, you
Mhm.
know, who also would receive word from God in a different way. So, I think that that's appropriate language for him, but he's also very, very eager to obey God's commands, and he does know what God has commanded. He's commanded to go, to take possession of the land, to drive out the Canaanite inhabitants. That's all you gotta tell the man, and he's like, yes, absolutely, let's do that. So I think that he's very strong in his desires and his goals and his pursuits here as far as obeying God, but he recognizes, you know, he's no Joshua, he's no Eleazar, or whatever, so, yeah. There was one that I noticed, verse 7 of chapter 14. Who was it that read that one? 1, 2, 3, 4,
Be Tracy, cause
7.
Mary
See,
did 8, and I noted something there.
Melting.
Yeah, was that in 8?
Mhm.
Mary Lee
Mary
read,
Lee read
yeah,
it,
mine
yeah.
says frightened, yours
Yeah,
probably
I
does
noticed
too.
that too, yeah.
I thought somebody said conviction instead of heart.
Mine did.
Yours did, okay.
Read it to us.
Is this 7?
Mhm.
Yes.
I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land, and I brought him back a report according to my convictions.
I like that. I like that. Mine says according to my heart, but I like that according to my convictions, which is a lot stronger when you remember exactly what happened with Joshua and Caleb spying in the land and coming back, and the 10 of the 12 were like, yeah, it's a great land, but no way, Jose, man. And Joshua and Caleb were the only two who were willing to say, if God says we can take it, let's go take it. Let's not turn back away from this. And so that word conviction, I think, I like that a lot better.
Mine
Did you
says- Go ahead, sorry, mine says honest report there.
Oh, honest report, okay, yeah. Sorry, what were you gonna say, Sarah?
It was less meaningful. It was, did I hear you say, no way, Hosea?
You did.
Yeah, I thought so.
Just connecting with my Hispanic Perry roots here.
Oh, You're mixing them kind of
Yeah, a
here.
little bit, I know, yeah.
Hosea.
Spanglish.
Hosea.
It was less meaningful.
Okay, we need that too.
When you gave me that look, I thought you were gonna say, I forgot.
Oh, no. If it was a meaningful question, I would have forgotten.
That's true, that's how it goes, isn't it? All right, any other translation changes that you guys noticed? Did you notice anything else, Denise?
Just that 8,
the 8 one.
14A, what was it again?
She said the word melting.
Melt with fear.
What did your version say?
Frightened the
Oh.
people from entering the promised land.
You melted their hearts or something, I think
Yeah.
is what it
It was just a weird,
I was like,
Did you go see Wicked?
But I know Wizard of Oz.
Sarah's had a whole lot more words in verse 1 than mine.
Oh, really?
Yours was totally different than mine, the
Really?
first two. That's why I didn't know when to start.
Oh,
Denise, what version are you?
NLV, or NLT, sorry.
So, what's that stand for? New Living Translation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that one, usually, you'll see with a word for word versus the thought for thought, not only are there usually a lot more words with the thought for thought, but they swap
Uh-huh.
the order of
Yeah.
things.
Well,
That's what
that's-
makes it hard to
Yeah.
follow. Yep, yep. It's all still there, it's just in a different
different
order.
order.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's look at some cross references then. We're not gonna do all of these, but let's start with Numbers 26. So a lot of the content within these two chapters kind of harken back to Moses' day. So let's go walk down memory lane with Moses here. Numbers 26. Verses 54 to 56. Actually, I'm going to start in verse 52. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Among these the land shall be divided for an inheritance according to the number of names." I believe he had just done a census of the new generation. So that's what this is following. "To the larger group you shall increase their inheritance, and to the smaller group you shall diminish their inheritance. Each shall be given their inheritance according to those who were numbered of them. But the land shall be divided by a lot. They shall receive their inheritance according to the names of the tribes of their fathers. According to the selection by lot, their inheritance shall be divided between the larger and the smaller groups." So the lot thing, as far as deciding inheritance for the tribes, was decided all the way back in Moses' day. That wasn't something that just kind of came up with on the spot. That was a word from God to Moses to be spoken to the people. And then I have, along with that, Proverbs 16:33.
Crazy that that the clans didn't change that much, because that would have been before they wandered in the desert, right? That
No,
Moses-
new generation, census
Oh,
of the
this
new
is
generation.
Okay,
Mhm.
I was like, wow,
Are you
Last-
sure?
yeah, like, I could have changed a lot in the wilderness,
did.
like, who knows what could have happened.
And it did. One of my notes, did I have it on here, or did I say it already? I don't know. Did I say this in a different week? Something about, oh, no, hold on. Here it is. I'm making notes I'm back in Genesis 49, where Jacob's on his deathbed and he gives these prophetic words about each and every one of his sons. And it's really interesting, because now I'm looking at it again and I'm seeing some of these words of his are being fulfilled in the promised land. So looking at it is really interesting. But one of the things I noted was that Simeon started out as the third largest tribe when they left Egypt. And after 38 years of wilderness wandering, 63% of the tribe perished.
He's one of the smaller ones.
Yep, he became the smallest tribe.
That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that
That's
absolutely?
Simeon? you said?
Simeon.
They were not fertile myrtles. I mean, they did not.
No, it wasn't because of that. It's because it had more issues with rebellion over the course of the wanderings. Because remember, that whole time, everybody that was a generation of unbelief was to die out before they could enter the land again. And so 63% of them, they went from the third largest to the smallest. And because of that, because of a lot of unbelief in the tribe, and also because of their numbers diminishing, they became the weakest tribe. So,
What tribe was Achan from again?
Who?
The guy that stole the gold.
right. That's a good question. Now I wanna know, when was that? That was Joshua something. That was AI,
Oh, Achan.
so 7. Judah.
Judah.
Interesting. Yeah, I would be too.
Sidetracked.
That's okay.
And you're like, oh, we're probably not.
Yeah.
It would just be a little funny if it was from the tribe of Simeon,
That would be.
but I'm sure they all had rebellious people.
Yes, I'm sure. It would be interesting to, I only have that information on Simeon. It would be interesting to see across the board.
Yeah, the
everybody's-
layout.
Yeah. Okay, what was I doing?
Proverbs.
16:33. The lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. I just thought that went perfectly with this idea of sacred lots. I think some of the translations said sacred lots that were being cast for the inheritance. Because a lot of times we just think of lots as like gambling, and it's just chance, and it's just, there's not a whole lot of sacred to it. But that reminds us that, it's not just chance that's happening here. God is controlling every bit of it, so. Numbers 13, for anybody who wants to know, Numbers 13 is when Moses sends spies into the land. So that whole chapter is about the backstory of Joshua and Caleb. We're not going to read the whole thing, but that's that. Genesis 49, 8 through 12. We will read that because that is Jacob's prophecy about Judah, and I think it's very interesting. I went down a little rabbit hole, and it was a lot of fun. Genesis 49, 8 through 12. Okay, this is Jacob on his deathbed, and he gives a prophecy concerning his sons. So, in verse 8, Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down to you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He couches, he lies down as a lion who dares rouse him up. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. He ties his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washes his garments in wine, and his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are dull from wine, and his teeth white from milk. So I know it sounds all like gibberish, but there are portions of that we can directly link to things, and I'll talk about that in the summary. And then for anyone who wants to look, Genesis 15 is God's original promise to Abraham about giving him a land, and your inhabitants will possess it and all that kind of stuff. So that's where that is. So okay. Any other thoughts or questions before we get into the summary here?
I don't remember this from Genesis 49, at the very beginning of that, before you did the 8 through 12.
Mm-hmm.
Then Jacob summoned his sons and said, assemble yourselves that I may tell you what shall befall you in the days to come.
Mm-hmm.
Sheesh. That would be, I don't know.
Heavy.
Yeah, I don't
No.
know that I'd want to assemble myself and hear that, yeah.
Sorry, Dad, I got a thing.
Considering some of them are not good, like I was reading Simeon and Levi, and it's not like good, like,
Yep.
it makes sense, well, maybe why
Yep.
Simeon dwindled so much.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there is a lot of validity to that. Not that everyone has their own free will choices, including these generations and generations later. But there's still, these are prophetic words, and it's clear that we can see some of the effects of it, even just, in what I talked about, how their tribe diminished greatly. That kind of says something there. Yeah, I recommend reading that, actually, again, that whole chapter 49. It's really interesting, and I'll bring up some more of that as we go into some of the other tribes' land inheritances. Yeah, we can do that later. So, okay. So, to summarize here, in verse 14, the first 5 verses are more of a recap that we see about the territories. There's the 2.5 tribe that's on the one side, and the 9.5 on the other side, and that kind of thing. So it's a bit of a recap. But then we see in verse 2, it gives us information there about how the lot, that's this dividing of inheritances by lot. God had instructed Moses that. And so I actually have here a couple of notes. This is a couple of things from some of my commentaries. They're thoughts from scholars. These are not pure facts. I do not have the full truth about how this all went down. But these are thoughts from scholars on how the lot bit took place. This one says, according to Jewish tradition, the name of a tribe was drawn from one urn and simultaneously the boundary lines of a territory from another. This method designated each tribal inheritance, but blind chance did not decide the tribal location, for God was superintending the whole procedure, as we had, read in Proverbs 16. This other commentary said, according to some, ancient rabbis believed the division by lot happened in this manner. 1, the land west of the Jordan was divided into 10 provinces and assigned a number for each province. Numbers 1 to 10 were written on 10 pieces of pottery or parchment and put in container. 2, the names of the 10 tribes receiving land on the west side of the Jordan were written on 10 pieces of pottery or parchment, and these were put in a second container. 3, Joshua drew a piece from one container, and Eleazar drew a piece from the other container. And then 4, the tribe drawn received the land of the province drawn. So maybe if you put those 2 ideas together, it has something to do with this casting lots is more of like pulling a name out of a hat, kind of a deal. We don't know exactly, but those are some of the ancient traditions that are of what happened that passed down. So, and then in verses 6 to the rest of the end of the chapter there, this talks about Caleb's inheritance, and it's a promise that's fulfilled that we actually see back in Moses' day of this promise to Caleb. And so we see Caleb, he's standing before Joshua. Now remember, this is General Joshua, but it's also his friend for like 45 years or something like that, and his fellow spy. This is a very intimate moment between the two. And now he's 85 years old. Caleb, he kind of retells the story of that memorable day 45 years ago. He recounts how they went to spy the land with Joshua and the 10 others. And for their faith, they were promised prolonged life. They didn't die in the desert like the others. And actually, if I remember the story correctly, I believe the 10 unbelieving spies died immediately through some act of God, if I'm correct on that. But not only did Caleb and Joshua have a prolonged life, but they also got to not just enter the land, because remember, even Moses and Aaron didn't even get to enter the land. They get to not only enter the land, but possess it, to actually enjoy the land that God promised to them. And so here is Caleb. He is standing strong on God's promises, and he requests a plot of land for his own. Joshua, he has this response to Caleb, and it's twofold. First he blesses Caleb, because he knows that Caleb has a daunting task ahead. He's not just buying a house and moving in. This is taking over a piece of land. This is driving out the inhabitants. This is doing whatever work is necessary to make this an enjoyable land for his family, for his people. That's a lot of work, a lot more than we realize it would be. And then Joshua also gives him Hebron, and that kind of makes it a legal land transaction. He gives him more than Hebron, but I think giving him Hebron is like this, like stamp of, you know, official bit, I guess. So then we see the text tells us that Hebron is formerly called Kiriath Arba, and says there above Hebron it says Anakim, and that's exactly what this is. Kiriath Arba, named for Arba, and that was the greatest among the Anakim, the giants. Kiriath Arba is literally a nation of giants. Caleb requested this land. He requested the land of the giants. Do you guys remember another time where Caleb came up against giants? This is literally the section of land that he and the spies encountered all those years ago. And Caleb's going, I want that bit. I want that bit. The whole thing that started all of the problem, I want that. I'm going to take it. And so I just think that that's really, really, really cool. You know, the land that struck fear into the hearts of those 10 men. Caleb is saying, you know, I'm eager to go and do what God's commanded of me for that. And then something else that I noted is that we said Caleb is from the tribe of Judah. Judah is the first to receive land inheritance on the west side of the Jordan, and of the tribe of Judah, Caleb is the very first. He's the very first of anybody to receive land inheritance on the west side of the Jordan. I think it's really appropriate for him. So, any thoughts so far on Caleb's life, his faith, his request? Anything?
So I have a question. So
Yeah.
the territory was given to a tribe,
Right.
but Caleb actually gets a special designation.
Yeah, it's almost like he gets first pick out of that area.
Did other people in the tribe then get cities, or it belonged to the whole tribe? He gets Hebron because of who he is,
Yeah.
and because he also specifically reminds Joshua, remember what God said.
I don't
So
know.
he's special in what he's getting here?
Yes, I think so. They didn't, that's a good question. I don't know if they, like, did casting lots or drawing name out of the, you know, hat thing for people within a territory after that point. And Caleb is special because he gets to request which section he wants. Or if it's more of just like,
Jointly owned is how I.
jointly owned, but also whoever conquers something, they can inhabit it. You know, that was part of the reason why they're dividing up the inheritance and going and settling in the land before it's even fully conquered. Remember, there's still plenty to be conquered at this point. But they're going ahead and they're settling into the land. Is this idea, I think I talked about it last week, of if you have this ownership, then you're more invested and you're more willing to do the work that it takes to fully possess the land. So if we go and we drive out the inhabitants of this place and we live here and we possess it, then I am more committed to driving out the rest of the inhabitants in my land territory. That's my territory. They can't be living here. I already live here. I want to also be able to have people living in that place, and that place, and that place, so that we can all spread out and possess our entire territory. That's the whole point of it. So whether it's just a joint thing, or it's also kind of a, you know, if you conquer it, you can have it kind of thing.
But it says
within the families.
that they rested from war after Caleb got that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what that means, because there was still a lot of driving out of inhabitants, but there was a lot less, if you notice in the wording of it, there's a lot less of destroyed them utterly and not a single person lived and that kind of thing. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen, but I think there's a lot less of that. From what I read in the commentary is that when Joshua and his men went through and kind of just like wiped the whole area, he's taking out the heads. And so now everything kind of has this temporary hold, but there's still a lot of people that are still inhabiting areas. And so now he's got to have the rest of Israel, who's all camping at Gilgal, they're all going, okay, now all the land places are divided up, everybody gets their inheritance territory, okay, now go possess it. What does that look like? Is it just empty houses that are just sitting ready for them to just move in and move in their stuff on moving day? No, sometimes they have to go and actually drive out inhabitants. They might not have had leadership in those areas because Joshua wiped out the leaderships, the kings, but they still need to deal with a lot of these people. Now, some places, they killed everybody. We see that in places like Jericho, Ai, everybody was killed and the place was burnt to the ground. So there are certain places, yeah.
Well, if Israel possesses all that land, no matter where it is in that section, where could those people have gone?
That's
Except
what I wanna know.
Into somebody else's,
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
You get driven by them and them and.
Yeah.
How far would they have to have gone to not be in someone's territory?
Sure.
Or did they kill them?
I don't know that. It says drives out, and so I want to take the text as it says. I don't know where they went. I have no idea. Yeah, no idea
Well,
whatsoever.
and did each tribe then, were they responsible for doing their own
Yes,
conquering?
yes.
So that might have,
They
before
had
it
their
was
own
a
eviction
massive
work.
group of men
Right.
fighting this,
Mhm.
and if they rested from war, by the time everybody got where they were gonna go, it seems it would take a while to,
Mhm.
a lot
And it's
less people.
interesting, we're gonna see, as we keep reading, some people took the easy route. Some tribes took the easy route and just made the inhabitants their slaves. Others, they couldn't, like with Jerusalem, we're gonna talk about Jerusalem, the Jebusites. They literally could not get them out. I'll share my thoughts on that. Where is my notes on that?
So after this, God didn't necessarily command them to wipe out a people. After, from now on.
As far as I know, I don't believe so. They were supposed to take his command to possess the land and to fully conquer it, and they now they're supposed to take the initiative and be like, okay, this is what I need to do. God's given us the commands to enter the land, to possess it, to drive out the inhabitants, or to kill them. They're not allowed to be there cohabitating with Israel because they're going to bring idol worship into Israel. That's the whole purpose of getting them out. It's for their protection almost. And so Israel should be able to, it's a large, powerful people with God behind them. They should be able to just do that. So,
That doesn't mean they did though.
no, it does not.
And then you would also have intermarriage.
Yep.
Besides the idol thing, you're gonna have the
Yep.
intermarriage.
Exactly. It's a whole mess. Yep. Okay. Oh, a little bit of math here of how I got to the point where I said conquest took 7 years. Don't worry, it's easy. Don't worry. Caleb, he's 40 years old when Moses sent him and Joshua into the land to spy. At that point, it had been 2 years since they left Egypt. And then after that point, they wandered for 38 years, and that makes a total of 40 years. And so 40 years old, plus the 38 years of wandering brings Caleb's age to 78. At the end of the wars, we see Caleb is 85 minus 78, 7 years. So, I can do that math, yay! And this is actually confirmed by Caleb when he refers to God's faithfulness and his sustaining grace for 45 years since buying the land. So he confirms my math for me. So, any thoughts or questions on 14? And then I will quickly try to do 15. I'm sorry, it's already 7:30.
So Caleb and Joshua were about the same age, right?
Yes.
I was just thinking, like, why did Caleb become the next successor after Joshua?
Ah.
Because then it goes into Judges. But if
Right.
they're around the same age, I'm sure they probably died probably around the same time.
Yep.
And God, I mean, the Israelites were not
Yep.
doing their thing anymore, so.
Well, yeah. Well, and really, God had set up a system so that they should be good. You know?
I mean, yeah. it
That
should-
was the
yeah.
whole, that was the goal, the plan. They had laws and rules. They had sacrifices to deal with things. They had, land and territory so that they could settle, and even rules about the land so that the land was a blessing. I mean, they had so much that was set up for them in their favor, and so really, I mean, once they just kind of allowed that idol worship to have a foot in the door, that was their downfall. Yeah. Okay, chapter 15. The first 12 verses are all about the territory borders of Judah's land inheritance. And like I said, Judah was the first of the tribes to receive an inheritance, and as the largest tribe, her portion exceeded that of any of the others. Huge area. Okay, I'll try to do this quickly as far as looking at the prophecy in Genesis 49. Remember the life of Judah. Remember, he had a lot of issues. He sold his brother Joseph into slavery. He wronged his daughter-in-law. Remember, his daughter-in-law, her first husband died, and then she married the second son of Judah, and he died, and so he didn't want to give her the third one, and so he refused that to her, which he was supposed to give her that third son as a husband. And so she ended up tricking him as a prostitute so that she could get pregnant with his child so that she could have something in the family. So yeah, he had a lot of issues. But he also showed really good character. Remember, he's the one that wanted to substitute himself for Benjamin when Benjamin was going to be taken. And he was saying, no, take me, I can't do that. That would literally kill my father. So he's got a few things going for him. But really what we see with him is that Judah is an example of God's grace to the undeserving. And that's kind of something that we see through that. And obviously, who comes from the line of Judah? Jesus, exactly. And Jesus is that ultimate example of God's incredibly rich grace to the undeserving. So some of the things that we see in that prophecy for Judah, we can actually see as a description of concerning Jesus as well. So it's almost like Jacob was speaking a prophecy over his son's tribe's future, but also looking way into the future to Jesus, who would come from that tribe. So first it was Judah was given the leadership aspect. Remember, the firstborn inheritance had two parts to it. They would become the new head of the family, and they would be given a double portion of the blessing. Judah is given the leadership aspect of the firstborn inheritance. And obviously that looked forward to where the kings would eventually come from, the tribe of Judah. And then we have the Messiah, God's ultimate leader, God's ultimate king, coming from that tribe. Prophecy also says it'll be surrounded by enemies. It says something about your hand is on the neck of your enemies. Judah's territory is literally surrounded by enemies. It's hard to see in this one. It's better in the other one. But you've got Moabites and Edomites and Amalekites and Philistines. It's just all the way around the lower portions all the way around. And so, Judah was gonna need these strong rulers like David to survive that, and that's where we get a lot of these encounters with David, in battle with a lot of these enemies. Another part of the prophecy speaks of vineyards. The land allotted to Judah was ideally suited for planting of vineyards. And it was actually from a valley in the territory of Judah. Remember, that's where they saw the giants. The spies saw the giants. It's also where they cut that huge cluster of grapes that they brought back to show everybody. So that's pretty cool too. And then something else that I noticed was it talked about tying a donkey's colt to the vineyard, and we know, Jesus also is connected to that as well. So that's all I have on that. But I thought it was really interesting. Verses 13 to 19, but what I read, included in Judah's portion is Hebron, which was granted to Caleb. We see that Arba is the father of Anak, and that's the family of giants, if you want to call it that. And so the record shows that Caleb had some help from his nephew Othniel, who became his son-in-law and actually later became a judge of Israel. Probably didn't realize that, but Othniel became a judge of Israel later on. So something that I notice here is that not only was Caleb very eager to conquer and to possess the land, but also he was encouraging others to do the same. And so that's why I think that he was offering his daughter in marriage. He was encouraging others to also go out and to conquer and to possess. And that was his way of doing that, I guess. Verses 18 and 19 talks about Caleb's daughter. She's given in marriage to Othniel, and together they decide on a wedding gift that says a field. But then she doesn't stop there, and she goes back to her father and she asks him for a second blessing. She says, "You've given me the land of the Negev. Give me also springs of water." And I think the reason is, I think you guys were right on the money with that, where that land is going to be of little value without a source of water to actually make it beneficial.
Then why wouldn't he have given that to her in the first place? Both of them.
Maybe didn't have to. Maybe Othniel had already had something. I don't know. I don't know about that. Yeah.
Seems like he would have set her up pretty well.
Yeah.
And
unless there was a custom for how that went, a tradition of how they gave out those types of things. I mean, it's a daughter, not a son, so maybe that's part of it. But her coming back and boldly asking for that clearly pleased him, because he gave it to her. So, yeah. I don't know.
It confuses me, understanding when that's a good thing that somebody asks for something and when it's a bad thing that somebody asks for something.
Yep.
It's hard to know the context behind some
Right,
of the stuff, yeah.
right.
It's important to know that, because otherwise you don't
Right,
know.
right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. I mean, a lot of
When I
it
first
probably-
read that, I thought, uh-oh. And then,
She's in trouble.
nope. Okay.
Yeah. Part of it might have to do with the customs at the time, people cultures are different than ours. Could be that their relationship was just that good, that it was not an issue. You're right. It's so hard to tell. Yep. But here's the good news is that because Othniel was Caleb's nephew, that land was going to stay in the family. It was really important for land to stay in the family for all the tribes. And then verses 21 to 62 are cities that are part of Judah's land inheritance. This is, again, kind of like a land title document of Israel's conquest and ownership of and possession of the land of Canaan, and then furthermore what Judah's section is, legally what their section is. Genesis 15, God says to Abraham, "I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to take possession of it." And so that is chapter 15 of Genesis, and here we see in chapter 15 of Joshua that promise is becoming a reality, and that's kind of cool to see. Verse 63, we have the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem. What I read in my commentary as to why they never drove them out is because it was a very difficult city to conquer. It was set in a hilly terrain, and that made it really easy to defend, and so it was just very difficult for them to conquer that. Obviously, we look at the story of like Jericho, and you're like, hello, if you can take Jericho by walking around it, you should be able to take some silly old city, and it's set in a hill. But I don't know. We don't have any more information on it. It doesn't say anymore. We have the one verse that tells us it never happened. So,
And it doesn't say whether that was a good or a bad thing.
right.
It never happened and that was counted against them, or it
Right.
never happened and
Doesn't tell
life
us
went
that.
on.
Doesn't tell us that. What I do know is that it wasn't until the time of David, that was when he finally conquered the city, I guess. Yep. So, all right, that is everything I have on those two verses. Any questions or thoughts on them? I think, next year.
Are we not meeting next weekend?
No, I'm gonna take off the next 3, it's 3.
January, like, 7th or
calendar.
something like that. is
I
when
think
we'll
you're
go
right.
back.
I think yes, because the kids go back the 6th.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly right. So the 7th is when we will come back. I think my next section is gonna be 16 to 19, or chapter 16 to 19, but why don't you keep going to chapter 22? You have plenty of time, so. Might as well just finish out the whole book. 16 to 19 covers the territories, so I kind of wanted to do something on the territories. And then 20 to 22 talks about the Levite cities, the cities of refuge, that kind of thing. So, depending on how much material I gather, it'll be somewhere in there.
You're gonna have the kids all that time. How do you think when they go back on Monday, you're ready to teach on Tuesday?
That's why I'm taking next week off, because they're still in school until
Prep for January.
right, exactly. That's the hope and dream. And if I'm drowning, I'll just let you guys know.
Please do.
We can wait a week.
Yeah, I know.
Chances are we won't have it all read anyway.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, we'll go.
All right, sounds good. Sarah, would you mind closing us in prayer?
Oh, should I stop yawning first?
Sorry.
Okay. Lord, thank you that we can come together tonight and have read these passages and think about them and question things. And thank you that Rochelle has put so much into these so that she either has an answer or says she doesn't know. Thank you for all of that preparation and study. And thank you for what we're receiving from it. Help it to not just be historical or interesting, but somehow for us to be able to connect some dots in our lives and in the world because of what we're learning. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.